She tried to destroy my wedding, but ended up giving me the spotlight of a lifetime. At my own wedding, I thought the worst that could happen was tripping in my heels or forgetting my vows. I never imagined the real disaster would come from inside my own family. The image is burned into me forever the moment I stepped back into my room and saw Olivia standing in front of my dress, a tube of cadmium red oil paint in her hand, dragging it across the white lace like she was slitting its throat. The air left my lungs. For a heartbeat, the world tilted sideways. My dress, my one act of defiance, the only heirloom I'd ever built for myself, was ruined in a single deliberate stroke. The paint bled through the bodice down the silk skirt, a jagged wound that seemed almost alive under the light. And Olivia, she didn't even look surprised to be caught. She looked satisfied. She turned slowly, her eyes glittering like broken glass, and whispered, "It was too plain. All that white boring. Now it has a story." I wanted to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. I could barely hear over the roar in my ears. Years of swallowing words, of staying quiet while she played the star, held me frozen in place. Then came my mother. Caroline swept into the room, her pearls swinging, her presence heavy as a gavel. Her gaze darted between the crimson-slash gown, Olivia's smug half-smile, and my own face pale with shock. For a split second, I thought she might defend me, that maybe just once she'd see the cruelty for what it was. But no. Her expression hardened like cement. "Nikita," she said, sharp as a blade, "you shouldn't have provoked her." I laughed. A thin, bitter sound escaped me before I could stop it. Provoked her mom, look at my dress. But she only shook her head, eyes full of cold judgment. "You knew how fragile Olivia feels, how much pressure she's under. And still you had to flaunt this perfect little symbol of your so-called independence. You pushed her." My chest ached not just from the ruined lace, but from her words. They landed harder than the paint itself. It wasn't enough that my sister had vandalized the most personal creation I'd ever made. My own mother was rewriting the crime so that I became the criminal. That was the real betrayal. I wanted to collapse into the carpet to let the ground swallow me. Instead, I felt a steady hand on my arm. Sarah, my maid of honor, had been standing in the hallway, a silent witness to the whole spectacle. She didn't speak. She didn't argue. She simply raised her phone and snapped a single damning photograph of the gown. A perfect record of the violation. Then she slipped her arm under mine and whispered, "We're leaving. Now." Her words cut through the paralysis. I let her guide me out of the room, past my mother's sharp voice calling after us, past Olivia's triumphant silence. Each step felt like walking away from the version of myself that had begged for years to be seen as worthy. In Sarah's car, the world finally came back into focus. I sat wrapped in a hotel blanket later that evening, staring at the wall, shaking from the inside out. My hands still smelled faintly of turpentine, a useless attempt I'd made to dab the paint off before realizing it was hopeless. My dress, the one thing I thought no one could take from me, was gone. But Sarah was already moving. She typed quickly on her phone, then turned the screen toward me. She had posted the photo online with a short clinical statement. "Due to a deliberate act of vandalism by a family member, the wedding of Nikita and Robert is canceled. Please respect their privacy." "No," I whispered. "You didn't." "I did," she said, her voice firm. "If you don't put the truth out there, your family will rewrite it. At least this way, no one can twist what happened." She was right. In my family, silence had always been a weapon. And in that silence, I had always been painted as the problem. This time, the evidence spoke louder than any accusation. As the night deepened, my phone buzzed nonstop. I didn't want to look, but I did. Messages poured in from relatives, acquaintances, even strangers. Some were horrified, some demanded explanations, and just a few, were filled with a surprising kind of fury on my behalf. That's when the thought slipped into my mind, quiet but persistent. Maybe this wasn't just the end of my wedding. Maybe it was the beginning of something else. But I couldn't hold on to that yet. Not while the image of Olivia's glittering eyes and my mother's cold dismissal replayed like a loop I couldn't escape. Tell me, what would you do if your own sister destroyed the one symbol of your independence and your mother stood there and blamed you for it? Would you stay and fight, or would you walk away, knowing that in your family story, you'll always be cast as the villain? For me in that moment, I only knew one thing. I couldn't go back. People think family favoritism is subtle. A gentle tilt of attention. A parent who just happens to beam a little brighter at one child than another. But in my house, favoritism wasn't subtle, it was a language. A living, breathing script written in objects, rituals, and silent comparisons. My grandmother's china went to Olivia the day she moved into her first apartment. My father's gold watch, the one he promised to pass down to his eldest, disappeared from his drawer and reappeared on Olivia's wrist at her college graduation. And when I asked about it, my mother's reply was smooth, rehearsed. "She deserves it, Nikita. You're not the type to wear something like that." That was their language, who deserved things and who didn't. Olivia was the star, the heir to every heirloom. I was the extra. If family was a theater, she got the stage lights, while I shuffled props in the shadows. The worst part wasn't even the distribution of things. It was the way those things translated into value. To my parents, Olivia wasn't just the daughter with pearls, china, and watches. She was the daughter worth investing in. And I was the one good with dirt, the landscape designer who was handy with plans, but not worth the spotlight. I told myself for years that I didn't care. I buried myself in the slow rhythm of nature, in roots and soil and sunlight. But standing there, watching red paint bleed across the lace I had stitched with my own two hands, I realized just how much those years of favoritism had trained me to accept cruelty as normal. Sarah sat with me in the hotel room that night, scrolling through the chaos she'd unleashed online. She read comments aloud, her voice incredulous. "This is monstrous. How could a sister do this? That dress was art. Whoever ruined it is sick. Protect Nikita at all costs." For every cruel message, there were 5 filled with outrage and support. Strangers were angrier on my behalf than my own mother had ever been. And that's when it clicked. My family's language of favoritism had always depended on silence. They relied on me, never pushing back, never showing my scars, never speaking my truth. Olivia was precious because I had always agreed quietly to be invisible. But Sarah's post shattered that silence in a way none of us could take back. I remembered the way my mother had looked at me when she said I provoked Olivia, as if the existence of my dress was an attack, as if my creativity was nothing but arrogance. That wasn't new. When I got into design school, my mother had said, "It's cute, you want to garden professionally." When Olivia booked her first minor acting gig, she threw a party with champagne. Do you see the pattern? In my family, my wins were always framed as hobbies. Olivia's hobbies were always reframed as wins. As Sarah scrolled, her brow furrowed. "Nikita," she said quietly, "this isn't dying down. It's going viral." I laughed, hollow and tired. "So what people will forget tomorrow." But she shook her head. "No. Look." She turned her phone toward me. A name glowed on the screen, Julian Croft. Even in my shock, I knew who he was. Julian wasn't just an influencer. He was the tastemaker in design, a man whose posts could revive careers or destroy brands. He had millions of followers, but more than that, he had credibility. If Julian Croft said something was art, the world listened. And he had just shared the photo of my ruined dress. His caption was brutal. "This isn't just vandalism, it's a crime against craftsmanship. To destroy something so intimate, so painstakingly created, is to spit in the face of art itself." Within minutes, his followers flooded the comments demanding justice for me. I sat there staring at the screen, the irony settling heavy in my chest. My own mother couldn't spare a word of defense. But a stranger, a man I had never met, had called me an artist to millions. Do you know what it feels like when someone finally sees you? After decades of being told you're plain invisible, forgettable, it's intoxicating. Terrifying, but intoxicating. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Olivia's smug face, my mother's cold glare, the way Sarah had tugged me out of the house like I was escaping a fire. And yet underneath the ache, there was a spark. For the first time in my life, I wondered if maybe I wasn't the invisible daughter after all. Maybe I was something else, someone they had been too blind to recognize. But I also knew my family wasn't done. People like my mother didn't surrender control. They twisted, they manipulated, they rewrote stories until they came out looking noble. And I had just ruined her script. The favoritism wasn't just about pearls and watches, it was about control. And I had just taken the pen out of her hand. What happens when a family built on favoritism loses their scapegoat? When the daughter they dismissed as nothing suddenly becomes a story the world is watching. I didn't know yet, but I had a feeling Olivia and my mother weren't going to let me go without a fight. The morning after Sarah's post, I woke to a storm I hadn't invited but could no longer control. My phone buzzed like a hive, hundreds of notifications stacked on top of each other. Strangers tagging my name, journalists sending DMs, friends I hadn't spoken to in years, asking if the rumors were true. I rubbed my eyes, still raw from crying, and clicked open Instagram. Sarah's single photo, the splash of red paint against the white lace, had been shared over 50,000 times overnight. What she'd meant as a shield had become a torch, one that lit up corners of the internet I never thought would notice me. My hands trembled as I scrolled. People were dissecting every stitch of my dress, zooming in on the fern motifs I had hidden in the lace, marveling at the detail. "This is art," someone wrote. "This isn't just a wedding dress, it's a living poem." Another comment, "Who destroys something so beautiful? The sister should be ashamed." For once, the world wasn't mocking me. It was mocking them. Then came Julian. His post had gone viral overnight. The caption, sharp damning, was being quoted on design blogs, retweeted by celebrities, even discussed in morning talk shows. My ruined dress had turned into a cultural talking point, an emblem of jealousy versus artistry. I stared at my screen, disbelieving. And then my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize, but Sarah's eyes went wide when she saw it. "Answer," she urged. The voice on the other end was unmistakable, Julian Croft himself. Smooth, deliberate, carrying the kind of authority that made people listen. "Nikita," he said, as if we were old friends. "I don't usually call strangers, but what happened to your dress, it's not just personal, it's cultural, it's an attack on everything I stand for. And I won't let that be the final word." I swallowed, unsure if I should even believe this was real. "It's just a dress," I whispered, though my voice shook. "No," Julian corrected me gently but firmly. "It's not just a dress. It's your story, and the world has already chosen to rally behind it. Don't shrink now. Stand with it." He proposed something outrageous, a new wedding. Not a quiet private redo, but a spectacle, a reclamation. He had the connections, the resources, the audience. He said he could make it happen in a week. Part of me wanted to hang up. The thought of my wedding, something I had dreamed of, as intimate, sacred being, turned into a stage, made my stomach twist. But then I thought of Olivia's smirk, my mother's cutting words, the years of being the invisible one. Maybe this was bigger than me. Maybe this was the universe offering me the spotlight Olivia had tried to destroy. Robert, my fiancé, sat beside me through the call, his hand covering mine. He didn't speak until Julian hung up, but when he did, his words steadied me. Nikita, the wedding was always about us. That hasn't changed. But if sharing our vows with the world also reclaims your voice, I'm with you. I broke down then, not from despair, but from relief. For the first time, someone wasn't asking me to stay small. The next 72 hours blurred into a frenzy. Julian's team descended like a well-oiled machine. A renowned designer offered to create me a new gown, calling it an emergency intervention against ugliness. Venues scrambled to host, eager to be part of the story. Messages flooded in from strangers wanting to attend, people who said they saw themselves in me, the overlooked daughter, the scapegoat, the one told her dreams were too much. The irony wasn't lost on me. Olivia had destroyed my dress to dim my light, and now that very act had made me brighter than I'd ever imagined. Meanwhile, my family remained silent, at least to me. Sarah's phone lit up with messages from our parents, accusing her of making things worse, demanding she take the post down. She ignored them. But late one night, my phone buzzed with a message from Olivia herself. Enjoy your 15 minutes. You've turned yourself into a pity project, nothing more. I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding. I almost replied, almost unleashed the fury I'd been bottling up for years. But then I remembered Julian's words, don't shrink. Instead, I set my phone down and whispered to myself, this isn't 15 minutes. This is my life, and it's finally mine. Still, I couldn't shake the unease. My family had always been performers on their own stage of favoritism and control. Now that the spotlight had shifted, I knew they wouldn't take it quietly. They would fight to pull it back no matter how ugly it got. And me, I wasn't sure yet if I was strong enough to face what was coming. But I knew this much: the world was watching now. And once the world watches, there's no turning back. The days leading up to the new wedding felt like standing inside a hurricane, chaotic, relentless, yet strangely exhilarating. Every morning, I woke to a barrage of emails from Julian's team, contracts with venues, drafts from the designer camera crew, schedules, influencer confirmations. It was a machine far bigger than me, yet somehow all of it revolved around my ruined dress. The new venue, a grand botanical conservatory, was secured within hours. The irony was almost too perfect. Olivia had always mocked me for being the plant girl, sneering at my career in landscape design, as if working with soil and sunlight was beneath her. Now I would marry beneath a cathedral of glass and greenery, a temple built for the very thing she despised. When Julian showed me the space, his voice carried that same persuasive calm. Do you see it? Your story doesn't end with destruction. It blooms again stronger. This isn't just about a wedding. It's about transformation. I nodded, though my stomach fluttered with nerves. It feels too big, I admitted. Too public. He smiled knowingly. That's what Olivia wanted, to make your private pain into her public victory. We're rewriting the script. The audience isn't hers anymore. It's yours. Still at night, when the noise died down, and Robert's steady breathing filled the hotel room, doubt crept in. Was I losing control of my own wedding? Was I letting strangers decide how my most intimate moment should look, feel, sound? I wanted to marry Robert, not perform for 1 million viewers on a live stream. Robert must have sensed it, because one night, he turned to me and said softly, if at any point this feels like too much, we walk away. I'll marry you in a courthouse, in a park, anywhere. All I care about is us. His words grounded me. I squeezed his hand and whispered, it's not too much. It's finally enough. Meanwhile, my family simmered in silence, or so I thought. Sarah, still my fiercest ally, showed me screenshots of group chats from relatives. Some defended Olivia, parroting my mother's words that I had provoked her, that I was using this for attention. Others expressed quiet sympathy, though none dared say it publicly. My mother herself had started calling extended family, spinning a narrative that I had abandoned them for fame. It was the same story she told my whole life, that I was selfish whenever I dared to choose myself. Only now, the world wasn't buying it. But Olivia was quiet, too quiet. That silence unsettled me more than any insult. She wasn't the type to retreat. If she wasn't attacking publicly, then she was plotting privately. I just didn't know what shape her next move would take. The gown fitting brought me back to the present. The designer, a legend in the fashion world, had created a masterpiece, a sculptural silk dress embroidered with silver threads that shimmered under light. It was armor disguised as elegance. When I saw myself in the mirror, I didn't just look like a bride. I looked like a woman finally claiming her space. Sarah clasped her hands over her mouth, tears in her eyes. You look untouchable, she whispered. For once, I believed it. The conservatory transformation was breathtaking. Exotic orchids draped from glass beams. Ferns lined the aisle, echoing the hidden motifs I had sewn into my original dress. Lanterns glowed like stars beneath the glass ceiling. As the production team tested lights and cameras, I stood in awe. This is bigger than a wedding, Julian said, his voice low but charged. It's a rebirth. And when you walk down that aisle, you won't just be walking toward Robert. You'll be walking away from every chain your family ever tried to put on you. I should have felt empowered. And part of me did, but another part, smaller and trembling, couldn't shake the fear. My family wasn't gone. They weren't defeated. They were watching, waiting, sharpening their knives in silence. The night before the ceremony, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Olivia. Her voice was cool, detached, almost clinical. Congratulations, she said. You've managed to turn your sob story into a circus. Enjoy the applause while it lasts. My chest tightened. Why are you calling me? Because I want you to know something, she continued. Spotlights burn out. And when yours does, you'll come crawling back. And I'll be waiting. Before I could reply, the line went dead. I stared at my reflection in the darkened hotel window, her words echoing in my head. Maybe she was right. Maybe this was temporary. But as I looked at the dress hanging nearby, shimmering faintly in the moonlight, I reminded myself Olivia had tried to take everything from me. Instead, she had handed me the one thing she could never steal, proof that I could rise from her destruction. Tomorrow, the world would watch me rise. The morning of the new wedding felt unreal, like I was stepping into someone else's dream. I woke before dawn, the hotel room still and quiet except for Robert's breathing beside me. For a moment, I lay there frozen, wondering if this would all vanish. When the sun rose, if I'd wake to find the ruined lace dress, the smear of red paint, and the suffocating silence of my mother's disapproval. But no, today was different. Today, I wasn't the victim of sabotage. I was the bride of a story that had taken on a life of its own. The conservatory was buzzing with activity by the time we arrived. Camera crews whispered into headsets. Florists adjusted cascading orchids. Rows of chairs gleamed under the glass ceiling, each one occupied by faces I didn't recognize, but who seemed to know me. Strangers smiled as if they were old friends, their eyes carrying an empathy I hadn't expected. When I slipped into the bridal suite, Sarah was already there. She hugged me tight, whispering, "This time, no one gets to ruin it." I wanted to believe her. As I dressed, the gown seemed to hum with its own energy. The silk flowed around me like water, the silver thread catching the light with every movement. It was more than fabric. It was a declaration. I wasn't just a bride. I was a survivor stepping into the world with scars disguised as beauty. The music swelled. My cue came. I clutched the bouquet, white orchids, and night-blooming jasmine, a nod to the motifs from my ruined dress, and walked to the entrance of the glass atrium. My knees trembled, but the moment the doors opened, everything fell still. Hundreds of eyes turned to me, but instead of judgment, I felt warmth, a tide of support lifting me forward. I caught sight of Robert at the end of the aisle. His expression, steady, awed, unshaken, anchored me. Whatever this spectacle had become, he was still the reason I was here. Step by step, I moved through the sea of strangers who had chosen to bear witness. I could feel their energy, a collective vow that I wasn't alone. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I wondered if Olivia was watching, seething in some dark corner, furious that my story had eclipsed hers. And then I saw her. It was only for a second across the crowd, just behind a row of orchids. A flash of familiar eyes, lips pressed into a cruel smile. Olivia. She wasn't supposed to be here. The guest list was tightly controlled. Security had been briefed. But somehow she had slipped in. My heart stuttered. Sarah noticed the shift in my face and glanced where I was looking. But by then, Olivia was gone. Maybe she had ducked away. Maybe I had imagined it. Either way, I forced myself to keep walking. This was my moment. Robert took my hand as I reached the altar. His palm was warm, steady and grounding me against the swirl of unease. The officiant began, and for the first time all morning, I exhaled. We spoke our vows under the glow of lantern light and camera beams. Robert's words were simple but fierce. No storm, no sabotage, no betrayal can undo what we've built. You're my home, Nikita. Always. When it was my turn, my voice trembled, but I didn't look away from him. They tried to make me feel small, invisible. But you, I squeezed his hand. You saw me, you chose me, and I choose you again and again, no matter who tries to tear us down. The crowd erupted in applause when we kissed, a thunderous affirmation that drowned out the ghost of my family's voices. For one dizzying moment, I felt invincible. But just as the applause peaked, a sharp sound cracked through the conservatory, glass shattering. Gasps rippled through the guests. I spun instinctively, and there she was, Olivia. She had smashed one of the display cases, holding rare orchid shards glittering at her feet. Her face was pale, twisted with rage. "You think this is yours?" she screamed, her voice echoing against the glass walls. "This spotlight, this sympathy, you stole it from me. You've always stolen from me." Security rushed forward, but the crowd froze, caught between horror and fascination. The livestream cameras whirred, capturing every frame. My blood turned to ice. This was her plan. Not to stop the wedding, but to stain it just like she had stained my dress. And for a heartbeat, I wanted to crumble, to scream, to beg her to leave me alone. But then I felt Robert's hand tighten in mine and Sarah's eyes burning with fury from the front row. No, not this time. I stepped forward, my voice steady, louder than I thought possible. "Olivia, you didn't ruin me. You made me stronger. And today you're not my sister. You're just a stranger desperate to be seen." The room went dead silent. Olivia's face flushed red. Security seized her, dragging her toward the exit as she kicked and spat. But her screams no longer reached me. All I could hear was the crowd first whispers, then applause, building like a tidal wave. They weren't clapping for the chaos. They were clapping for me. For survival. For defiance. I turned back to Robert, breathless but unbroken. He smiled, tears in his eyes. "You're incredible," he whispered. And for the first time in years, I believed it. When the door slammed shut behind Olivia, the conservatory was left vibrating with the echo of her outburst. For a long moment, no one moved. The shards of glass at her feet glinted like cruel little stars, the only trace she had left behind. Then slowly, the applause swelled again, not polite, not hesitant, but thunderous, as if the entire room had collectively decided that her exile was a victory worth celebrating. I stood there, my chest heaving, Robert's hands still anchored in mine. Inside, I was trembling, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of standing up to her publicly, decisively, irrevocably. It felt like the air had shifted, like the years of silence and submission I'd endured in my family had cracked open into something unrecognizable. Sarah rushed to my side, her face pale with fury. "She doesn't get to take another second from you," she whispered fiercely. "This day is yours. Do you hear me? Yours." I nodded, though the pounding of my heart made it hard to find words. The officiant, bless him, cleared his throat and said with admirable composure, "Well, I believe we were at the part where we pronounce you husband and wife." The crowd laughed, tension breaking like a wave. Robert leaned down and kissed me again, softer this time, grounding me. The applause was louder than before, and for the first time, I let myself believe the chaos was over. But it wasn't, not yet. The livestream had caught everything my walk down the aisle. Olivia's intrusion, her meltdown, my words. Within minutes, phones buzzed around the room. Guests were already scrolling through feeds, whispering in awe. Sarah showed me her screen. The clip of Olivia's breakdown was being replayed and shared faster than wildfire. The caption on one viral repost read, "From sabotage to resilience, bride faces down jealous sister mid-ceremony." My private pain had once again become public spectacle. Only this time, the narrative was mine. Robert and I slipped into the reception area, where tables glowed under soft lights and the scent of orchids mingled with champagne. Guests swarmed us with congratulations. Some praised my courage. Others admitted they'd never seen such raw drama unfold in real time. A woman I'd never met clasped my hands and said through tears, "My sister did the same to me years ago. Watching you stand up to yours, it healed something I thought would always ache." Her words pierced me. Maybe this wasn't just about me anymore. Maybe by refusing to crumble, I'd given others permission to stop crumbling too. But in the corner of the room, my phone buzzed, again and again. Calls, texts, emails, all from numbers I knew too well. Mom, Dad, even Olivia, though how she'd managed to text from whatever holding area security had taken her to, I didn't know. I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I danced. I laughed. I drank champagne while strangers toasted to my resilience. Robert's arm was around my waist all night, his steady presence reminding me of the anchor beneath the storm. For once, the spotlight didn't burn. It warmed. It wasn't until hours later, when the crowd began to thin and the music softened, that I finally picked up my phone. The first voicemail from my mother was shrill, indignant. "Nikita, how could you humiliate us like this? Do you realize what people are saying?" The second was quieter, more desperate. "Please call me back. Your sister. She isn't well. We can't handle this without you." And then my father's voice, low and weary. "Nikita, I don't know what to say. I think I finally see things I should have seen a long time ago. Call me when you're ready. No pressure, just, I'm sorry." I sat with the phone pressed against my chest, the weight of years pressing down. Guilt warred with relief, sorrow with vindication. Part of me wanted to scream that they'd made this bed, and now had to lie in it. Another part, the child inside me, still ached for their love. Robert noticed my expression and touched my cheek. "You don't owe them tonight," he said softly. "Tonight is for us." He was right. I slipped my phone into my clutch and let the messages sit unanswered. For once, I would not rush to put out their fires. The final dance of the evening was a slow waltz under the glass ceiling. The stars above us were faint, washed out by city light, but I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged in my own story. When the last guest departed and the conservatory emptied, I walked back to the shattered display case. The glass shards still glittered on the floor, but the orchids miraculously had survived. Their petals were unbroken, defiant against destruction. I touched one gently and whispered, "Me too." Because like those orchids, I had survived. Not untouched, but unbroken. And I wasn't done yet. The morning after the wedding, sunlight streamed into the hotel suite, golden and soft. For a moment, half asleep in Robert's arms, I forgot everything. No ruined dress, no glass shattering, no screaming Olivia, just warmth and quiet. Then my phone buzzed. Once, twice, then nonstop like a swarm of wasps against the nightstand. I reached for it groggy and froze when I saw the flood of notifications. My name was everywhere. Headlines screamed across the screen. Bride's sister, crashes wedding in shocking scene, live on stream. From sabotage to strength. Nikita's story inspires millions. Family feud or fairy tale, the wedding everyone's talking about. Clips of Olivia's outburst have been sliced, looped, memed, dissected. One video had already crossed 10 million views. My voice, the steady breaking one that said, "You don't get to ruin this day for me," was trending as an audio snippet on TikTok. Strangers were using it to narrate their own small acts of defiance. Quitting jobs, leaving toxic partners, standing up to bullies. My personal nightmare had become a cultural rallying cry. Sarah called her voice buzzing with adrenaline. "Nikki, you don't understand? You're everywhere? People are calling you a symbol of resilience. Fashion blogs are analyzing the symbolism of your new gown. Even psychology forums are breaking down Olivia's meltdown like it's a case study." I sat up in bed dizzy. A week ago, I'd been invisible. Now the world knew my name. But fame is never simple. Alongside the support came venom. Comments speculated about my family, dissected our private history. Some accused me of orchestrating the chaos for publicity. Others pitied Olivia, framing her as a tragic figure consumed by jealousy. And then there were the messages from my parents, dozens of them. Call us back now? You're destroying this family. Do you realize how humiliated we are? Each one burned, but none more than the message from Olivia herself written in uneven letters. Like she'd been shaking, you stole everything from me, and now the world knows. Are you happy? I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, Robert ordered breakfast. We ate in silence, both of us glued to our phones. Every channel replayed the clip. A news anchor on CNN actually called my story a modern parable about family dynamics and resilience under fire. It was surreal. By noon, Julian Croft had called. His voice was gleeful, triumphant. Nikita, you've gone from victim to icon overnight. Do you understand the power of this moment? You can write your own narrative now. I wasn't sure I wanted to be anyone's icon. I just wanted to breathe without Olivia's shadow pressing against me. But life doesn't pause when the world decides you're interesting. Invitations poured in, talk shows, podcasts, interviews. PR agents I'd never met begged to represent me. Strangers wrote messages saying my courage had given them hope. One even confessed she was leaving an abusive marriage after hearing my words. That one made me cry. Maybe this chaos wasn't meaningless after all. Yet, in the middle of that tidal wave of attention, my family was drowning. Sarah texted updates from Connecticut. Mom hadn't shown her face at the country club since the video went viral. Dad's business partners were whispering. Olivia had vanished into silence after her furious message refusing calls from even her closest friends. For the first time in my life, the imbalance had flipped. My family, once so proud, so untouchable, were now the ones being pitied, gossiped about, scrutinized. And I was the one being defended. It should have felt like justice. Maybe it did a little, but it also scared me. Because I knew my family and humiliation was a poison they'd never forgive. That night, Robert and I returned to the conservatory to collect some belongings left behind. The staff greeted us like heroes, shaking our hands, congratulating us. One whispered, "Your strength gave me courage to stand up to my sister too." Outside, a group of strangers waited with flowers and handwritten notes. They pressed them into my hands, eyes shining. "Thank you," they said, "for showing us we can choose ourselves." I smiled, but inside my chest was heavy, because choosing myself had come at the cost of my family. As we drove back to the hotel, Robert glanced at me. "You're quiet." I stared out at the city lights. The whole world thinks I'm strong. But what if I'm just broken in a way they can't see? He reached for my hand. Strength isn't about not breaking. It's about what you build from the pieces. I wanted to believe him. Back in the suite, I opened my laptop. A draft email blinked at me from my inbox, an invitation from a major network to tell my side of the story in prime time. Sarah had underlined it in all caps, "Do this. Take control of the narrative." But my fingers hovered over the keyboard. Did I want to expose more of myself? Did I want to drag my family's dysfunction into the light even further? Or would silence be the sharper weapon? The world was waiting for me to decide. 3 days after the wedding, I found myself sitting in a studio chair under blinding lights, a microphone clipped to my collar. My heart hammered as producers bustled around me, counting down to live broadcast. I hadn't wanted this. I'd resisted every invitation. But Robert and Sarah had convinced me. If you don't speak, they will. Sarah had warned. Mom will twist the story, Olivia will play the victim, and you'll lose the one thing you've gained control. She was right. Silence had always been my cage. This time, I had to speak. The host smiled at me, all polished warmth. "Nikita, thank you for joining us. Millions watched your wedding live stream. The world saw your sister crash the ceremony. How are you feeling now?" The camera's red light blinked. Millions of eyes on me? I took a breath. "I feel free," I said slowly. For years, I let my family define me. I was the quiet one, the background character, the scapegoat. But in that moment, when my sister tried to ruin my day, I realized I had a choice. I could crumble or I could claim my own story. I chose me. The host nodded, leaning in. "People are calling you an icon of resilience, but others say family is sacred, that airing private pain in public is betrayal. What do you say to that?" I met the camera's gaze. Ask yourself this. What do you owe a family who never saw you as more than their servant? What do you owe people who profit from your silence? Sometimes protecting yourself is the act of loyalty to the person you're meant to become. The audience clapped softly, the sound swelling like affirmation. The interview spiraled from there. They replayed clips of Olivia's meltdown. They asked about my dress, about the orchids, about the viral audio clip. I answered with honesty, but also with restraint. I didn't need to humiliate my family. They had done that themselves. All I had to do was tell the truth. By the time the segment ended, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Messages poured in, strangers thanking me. Survivors of toxic families sharing their own stories. The clip of my words, "Sometimes protecting yourself is the act of loyalty," went viral within hours. But while I gained admirers, my family's reputation crumbled. Sarah sent me updates. Mom had tried to host a charity luncheon 2 days after the wedding. Half the guests pulled out. The ones who came whispered behind linen napkins. One attendee leaked a video of Mom snapping at a server, captioned, "The woman who served Papa John's on Christmas Eve." It went viral for all the wrong reasons. Dad's business partners distanced themselves quietly, contracts evaporating overnight. Olivia's acting agency dropped her citing unprofessional public behavior. Her social media accounts vanished, either deleted or deactivated. It was as if the world had decided that our family dynamic, once hidden, was now public property. Every flaw, every cruelty dissected like gossip on a national stage. And I became the reluctant protagonist. Invitations kept coming. Podcasts wanted me to speak about resilience. Women's magazines wanted glossy spreads. A publishing house emailed Sarah offering me a book deal. But with every new opportunity, the knot in my chest tightened because I knew what was coming. My family wasn't going to accept defeat quietly. Sure enough, it began with a statement. Mom released a carefully worded letter to a lifestyle magazine. We love both our daughters equally. Unfortunately, Nikita has chosen to misrepresent private family matters in the public eye. We pray for her healing and hope she finds peace. The backlash was immediate. Commenters flooded the article, calling out the gaslighting. One wrote, if this is how she talks to the press, imagine how she talks to her daughters. Another, this isn't an apology, it's damage control. But the letter had its effect. For the first time since the wedding, I doubted myself. Maybe I was cruel. Maybe going public had crossed the line. Maybe Olivia's breakdown was less malice and more desperation. That night, unable to sleep, I replayed the video of her pouring paint on my dress, the smug triumph in her eyes. I replayed my mother's words. You shouldn't have provoked her, seared into memory. No, this wasn't my betrayal. This was theirs. And I was done carrying their sins like a second skin. The next morning, I accepted the book deal. If the world wanted my story, I would give it to them on my terms. Robert squeezed my hand when I told him. Good, he said simply. It's time you wrote the truth, not the version they forced on you. Still, as I typed the first words into a blank document, my phone buzzed again. A new voicemail from Dad. His voice was broken, tired. Nikita, your mother can't sleep. Olivia won't eat. The house feels empty. Maybe you're right about everything. Maybe we failed you. But please, don't burn the bridge completely. Leave a way back. I closed my laptop, staring into the dark. His words twisted in my chest. Did I want a way back? Or was the only way forward through fire? The world had turned my private battle into a public trial, and the verdict was still unwritten. The book deal felt like a door slamming open and a warning bell ringing at the same time. I signed the contract in a quiet corner of the publisher's office, the kind of room lined with shelves of stories that had once been secrets. My story was about to join them. The editor, a sharp-eyed woman named Elise, slid the papers back across the table. You understand? She said this won't just be a book. It will be a mirror. And mirrors can be cruel. I nodded. My family's already broken. At least this way, the breaking means something. Elise studied me, then smiled faintly. Good, because you're not writing for them. You're writing for everyone who's been silenced. That's who needs your voice. That night, I opened a fresh document and typed the first sentence. My family built a stage for my sister and buried me in the wings. But when the curtain finally fell, I was the one left standing. The words poured out like water from a cracked dam. For weeks, I wrote about the heirlooms Olivia inherited while I was given chores, about birthdays overshadowed, achievements dismissed, about the slow erosion of self that comes when the people meant to love you treat you as an afterthought. Each chapter was a wound reopened, but also stitched closed again, this time on my terms. But the closer the manuscript neared completion, the more vicious the messages became. Mom sent long emails dripping with half apologies and veiled threats. Olivia resurfaced online with cryptic posts about betrayal. Dad called once late at night, his voice slurred from whiskey. Do you really want to destroy us like this? He asked. And I wanted to scream, I didn't destroy us. You did. Meanwhile, the public appetite only grew. Excerpts leaked. Talk shows speculated. A headline declared the family feud that became a cultural battle cry. Strangers began sending me their own stories. Abandoned daughters, scapegoated sons, children who'd grown up invisible until they chose to stop shrinking. My inbox overflowed with pain, but also with gratitude. And yet beneath the flood of validation, guilt whispered like a ghost. One evening, Sarah came over with takeout. She dropped cartons on my counter, sat cross-legged on the floor, and looked me dead in the eye. You're hesitating, she said. I sighed. What if this book ruins them completely? Her laugh was sharp. They ruined themselves years ago. You're just refusing to cover it up this time. But Dad's voice? I trailed off, remembering the cracks in it. The plea for a bridge left standing. Sarah leaned forward. Listen to me. Bridges go both ways. If they want one, they can build it too. But you don't owe them planks out of your skin. Her words stuck. The reckoning came faster than I expected. 2 weeks before the book's release, a reporter cornered my mother outside the country club. The clip went viral instantly, her snapping at the camera, insisting I was making up stories for attention. When asked about Olivia's wedding sabotage, she hissed. My daughters have always been jealous of each other. It's normal. The internet disagreed. Commenters shredded her excuses. One wrote, if this is her public response, imagine her private cruelty. And then came Olivia's interview. She appeared on a small podcast, voice brittle, claiming she was the true victim. I was under immense pressure, she said, eyes wide with forced sincerity. Nikita always wanted to overshadow me. The dress was symbolic. I just snapped. But instead of sympathy, the comments seethed, snapped. She poured paint on her sister's wedding dress. Accountability isn't victimhood. Watching it, I realized something. For the first time, their weapons weren't working. Their narrative was collapsing under the weight of truth. The night before my book launch, I stood in front of the mirror staring at the woman reflected back. Not the invisible daughter, not the scapegoat, not even the viral bride, Just me, scarred stronger still, afraid but unflinching. Robert wrapped his arms around me from behind. You don't have to be perfect tomorrow, he murmured. Just honest. And I thought maybe honesty was the sharpest blade I had. At the launch cameras flashed as I walked on stage. Elise introduced me, calling me a voice for the overlooked. My palms sweated, but when I began to read the first passage aloud, silence fell. Not the heavy silence of judgment, but the charged kind, the silence of people listening, really listening. When I finished, applause rose like a wave. People stood, some cried. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just my reckoning. It was theirs too. Because by telling the truth, I wasn't just holding my family accountable. I was holding up a mirror for everyone who had ever been erased. And mirrors don't lie. The morning after the launch, I woke up to headlines that didn't feel real. From sabotage to spotlight, the bride who refused to break. Nikita's story sparks national conversation on family abuse. My phone buzzed nonstop with notifications, interview requests, and messages from strangers telling me my book gave them courage. But amid the noise, the most unexpected message came from Dad. Just 2 words, I'm proud. I stared at it for a long time. Pride, something he'd never offered me not once in 3 decades. The word felt foreign, almost counterfeit, but also warm. Like a draft of heat in a cold room. I didn't reply. Not yet. Within a week, the book was a bestseller. Stores sold out, hashtags trended. Book clubs dissected every chapter, debating whether I was too harsh, too forgiving, or not forgiving enough. That was the strange part. Strangers cared more about the nuance of my family than my family ever had. Meanwhile, Sarah stood by me like a shield. She read the nastier comments before I could. She intercepted the tabloid requests. When one headline screamed Olivia in hiding after sister's tell-all, Sarah muttered, "Good. Let her stew." But Olivia didn't stew quietly. She called me one night from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "You won," she said flatly. "This wasn't a competition," I replied, though my voice trembled. "It always was," she whispered. "And now everyone knows you're the good one, and I'm the villain." Silence stretched. I wanted to say, "You made yourself the villain." But instead, I asked, "Do you regret it?" There was a pause, then a bitter laugh. "Regret. I regret getting caught. That's all." The line went dead. I sat in the dark afterward, heart hammering. Some people don't change. Some people just double down. And yet days later, Mom called. Her voice was quieter than I remembered, stripped of its usual authority. "Nikita, she began your book. It hurt. But maybe it needed to." I didn't answer. I saw myself in those pages, she continued. The cruelty, the blindness. I don't know how to undo it, but her voice cracked. I don't want to die with my daughter hating me. A younger version of me would have rushed to soothe her to bridge the gap. But that version had been buried with the ruined dress. So I simply said, "Then don't repeat the same story." Click. The calls kept coming, but I no longer felt compelled to answer. Instead, I focused on building. The book had opened doors I'd never dreamed of: speaking engagements, TV panels, even a potential film adaptation. But the most meaningful door was smaller, quieter letters from girls in foster care, from women rebuilding after toxic marriages, from sons disowned for choosing a different path. They told me my story gave them language for their pain. That was a currency more valuable than any book deal. Robert, steady as ever, reminded me to breathe. He kept our home grounded, a place where I wasn't Nikita the viral bride, but simply Nikita, his partner, his equal. One evening, he said softly, "We've talked so much about your family, but what about ours? When do we start building it?" The question floored me. For so long, family had meant pain, betrayal, hierarchy. Could it mean something else? Could I write a new definition? I looked at him, at the man who never demanded I shrink to fit his shadow. And I said, maybe now. Weeks later, I found myself standing in the same botanical conservatory where my rewritten wedding had taken place. Only this time, I wasn't a bride trembling in resilience. I was a speaker standing before hundreds telling them, family isn't who claims you, it's who sees you. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from the people who don't. The applause thundered. In the front row, I spotted Dad. He looked smaller, older, but when our eyes met, he didn't look away. He mouthed again, "I'm proud." And for the first time, I almost believed him. When the event ended, I walked out into the crisp night air. The city lights shimmered like 1,000 tiny affirmations. Sarah slipped her arm through mine. "You realize," she said, grinning, "you're not invisible anymore. Not to them, not to anyone." I exhaled slowly. Good, because I was never meant to be. The new beginning wasn't clean or painless. My family was fractured beyond repair. Olivia, unreachable, my mother teetering between denial and remorse. But I'd built something they could never destroy, a life that was mine, seen, and celebrated. And maybe that was enough. Thank you so much for watching until the very end. Your support means everything. More unbelievable twists and true-to-life stories are on the way, and I can't wait to share them with you.